Welcome to Straight from the Source with Hayley Watts, and today we have Shasta County District Attorney Stephanie Bridgett, first female District Attorney in Shasta County, right?
Yep, first one.
And now it's, 2017 was when you took over?
2017 I was appointed, then had my first election in 2018, second election in 2022.
Okay, well, I mean, what's the experience been like for you?
You know, it's been very interesting. I started my career in this office, I'm in my 23rd year, so I've really seen a lot of evolution. And just even in the last, 7 to 8 years that I've been doing this has been just a huge change with just the way California has reformed and had new laws enacted and how that impacts our office and our local agencies. And it just seems like every year is something new.
Now, have you been in Shasta County your whole life?
No, I was born in South Carolina.
Oh.
My dad was in the Air Force, so I lived all over the United States growing up, and I came up here almost a year after graduating from law school to work in the DA's office, and I just loved it, and I've been there ever since.
Okay, so in your time in the DA's office, I mean, things really changed a lot during the pandemic. And I think that in Shasta County, out of all of Northern California, we saw, I don't want to say divisiveness, but you definitely saw people who were frustrated and angry all over the place, but a really vocal group in Shasta County, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like people, even the most vocal people, felt kind of on board with you and the way that you were handling things throughout all of that?
As far as the pandemic goes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, because, I met with and worked with all of our local law enforcement agencies, and it was very important to us to not make our business owners and all of them suffer from the closures. And I know that didn't happen in a lot of counties, and other counties where there was big crackdowns on businesses and filing cases of businesses. And we tried really hard to just work with businesses to try to make it to support them and not really criminalize what they were doing. So it was a very delicate balance, but we always had in our mind of not only the safety of the community going through the pandemic, but also people needed to still make a living and still keep their businesses going. So we worked really hard to make sure that that was our number one goal too.
Okay. There have been so many different cases in Shasta County in the past 7, 8, 9 years that have been just kind of intriguing, really. And then some of them, of course, devastating, like the Zogg Fire settlement. Yeah. That was a huge one for you.
It was.
The settlement that you reached, you feel good about that?
Well, I mean, it doesn't make me happy.
Yeah.
I really wanted to, hold PG&E criminally responsible for what they did, so that doesn't, having to resolve it for a civil judgment wasn't my first choice.
Yeah.
But I do feel like we were able to do a lot of good for Shasta County with that settlement and put a lot of safety things in place to help prevent future fires, make sure we are ready as a community if another big devastating fire happens, and put some parameters around the work PG&E was doing in our community to make it safer, like additional weather stations and getting rid of abandoned lines and different parameters we put on them to make it safer to live in Shasta County.
And those things are still happening, right? And you have oversight over them?
Yes, they're still happening. We still have an independent company that is overseeing PG&E. They are in contact with us almost weekly. They're constantly out looking for trees that might hit the lines, sagging lines, problems with the PG&E's infrastructure, so that those things can be found, told to PG&E, and fixed before, hopefully, preventing any future fire from ever happening. So that is ongoing for several more years. We have direct oversight to make sure they're operating safely in Shasta County.
Do you think there's any way out of this situation where a company does wrong, right? Something happens, people's lives are lost. And we talk about, you can prosecute them criminally but is anybody ever going to go to jail for those sort of situations?
Yeah, that's super difficult. It really is. The personal responsibility when you have a huge corporation that's just got hundreds of people and everybody's got a little different piece of responsibility in that corporate enterprise can be very, very difficult to find the evidence because, when it comes to criminal prosecution, it is proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
It is the highest legal standard in the nation. Rightfully so, because you're taking away a person's freedom, you're putting them in jail, you're impacting their life in a very significant way if they're convicted. So when it comes to getting that type of evidence against one individual in a corporation, it can be very difficult.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes me think about that AM, PM, mini mart, Rollins case where
Sure.
I know that you were really trying to get murder charges, right? And it ended up getting thrown out because of that, and there was maybe not enough evidence. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you felt so confident that, no, this person deserved murder charges in the case?
Yeah, well, we filed second-degree murder for the conduct that he engaged in that case. We did an analysis of the facts, of the law, the full circumstances that happened, and felt strongly that there's a sense of duty and responsibility of people working. In this case, it was the clerk working there towards the patrons, and the conduct was very dangerous given the facts and that particular individual's history, the person who was charged in that case, his conduct was definitely fell into what we would consider an implied malice for second-degree murder.
Okay.
And we believed that we could charge that. We did charge it. We were successful at the preliminary hearing. That's basically in front of a judge. A judge agreed with us that we could proceed to trial. Of course, then there was a lot of legal proceedings of where a reviewing judge said, no, they didn't think there was sufficient. We appealed that to the 3rd District Court of Appeal, who agreed with us that the facts were sufficient to go to trial. And that happens. That happens in these cases where we believe we can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, but everybody in the system has their place. The judges, they're going to make decisions based on the law and the facts. If we feel they're wrong, we might appeal it like we did to the 3rd District Court of Appeal.
Yeah.
But ultimately it comes down to a jury.
Right.
And a jury of our peers of what the community feels is acceptable in our community.
Yeah.
Do they feel like that conduct was second-degree murder or not?
Right.
And they make that decision.
Right.
And we advocate on behalf of what we feel is right, and the defense is going to do what they feel is right, and then it's in the hands of the jury.
Yeah. Have you ever put someone away and it turned out that they weren't guilty, or have you ever just kind of had that sneaking feeling or just not quite sure? I mean, it's got to be scary when someone's life is in
For
your
sure.
hands.
Yeah, I can personally say no. I do not believe that I have ever put anyone away that was innocent.
Yeah.
I do remember a case in my career where I got very close to trial. I had multiple victims in that case. And I don't remember all of the circumstances right now as we sit here, but I remember something not sitting right with me, and I really tracked it down and followed up on it, and ultimately was able to reveal that one of those victims in the case wasn't being truthful, and did some re-interviewing and was able to learn that no, they weren't being truthful, and that this person actually wasn't guilty, and I dismissed the case. That's what you need to do. But that was on the eve of trial, and I remember feeling that I had confidence in my case, and then to be able to learn that, you think, wow, that just really shows how much we do need to be taking a real critical look at every case.
Right.
And if we don't feel that we can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, then we need to not proceed.
Right.
And a lot of times we can get grief from community members on stuff like that when they think, oh, someone was obviously guilty, you need to file the case or go forward. We obviously know based on a headline that they read or something. You're like, well, we have to look at it a lot more deep. We have to consider our ethical standards, and we have to think of the constitutional rights of everybody involved.
Right.
The victim's constitutional rights, the defendant's constitutional rights, and do what's right for the community and for the case. That's why we don't represent any individual person.
Right.
We represent just the community,
Yeah.
the people of California.
Yeah. Do you feel like the people of Shasta County, for the most part, are supportive of the way that you pursue cases and your approach?
I feel that overall they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to start reading comments online, and that seems
Yeah.
to always be filled with
For all of us,
with
yeah.
the negativity,
Yeah.
and start thinking, oh man, more people think negatively of me or my office than positively. But then you really have to step back and say no.
Yeah.
You know, the people who go to work and are in our society, the common everyday person, they're not online reading all the comments and commenting about everything. They're living their lives.
Yeah.
And you start seeing like redundancy in the names of people who are always on there commenting. And so you kind of have to like compartmentalize that and know that you're doing the right thing. And,
Right.
and it shows up every election. I mean, that's
true.
That's
Right.
the time.
That's how you know.
That's when
Right.
the community is going to decide whether, we agree or no, we don't. So
What did you think when you first found out about the Patrick Jones Attorney General investigation into the Zogg Fire settlement?
So my whole career, I know that the Attorney General's office, they have oversight over the DA
Yeah.
offices. So that's not anything new to me, that they have the ability to look at our cases. We've told people, or I know I've told people throughout our career, hey, if you don't like that we dismissed that case, you can ask the Attorney General. They can come in and file it. They have
Yeah.
oversight. So the concept was not foreign to me, and I had complete confidence, and still do, in the way that case was handled. So it was fine by me that they wanted to ask the Attorney General's office to take a look at it. I knew that they would find that it was handled appropriately, because
Yeah.
that's the way I handled it. But it's also frustrating because it caused a lot of distrust in the community. And more importantly, I feel like it really re-victimized the people who had lost loved ones. And that's not just speculation, that's them talking to their advocates in my office saying, why is this continuing to be in the news? Why are these things being said when we know the opposite is true?
Yeah.
So you gotta, sometimes when you're put under a microscope and you're criticized and questioned so publicly like that, because maybe they don't like or agree or with the outcome, or they don't like you, I wish there was some time to take a pause and say, well, wait a minute. I'm not really just targeting her or her office. I'm actually hurting victims. I'm hurting survivors. I'm hurting a community by doing that in doing it so publicly.
Yeah.
So that piece was very frustrating.
Yeah, makes
Yeah.
sense. Totally different topic.
Okay.
So outside of the work hours, right? I know lawyers work much more than the typical 40-hour work
Sure.
week, but are you a prosecutor in your personal life, or do you kind of like compartmentalize and have a different persona?
Well, my kids might say I'm a prosecutor in my
Yeah.
personal life, because I'm pretty good at questioning them to get the truth out of what happened. But no, I'm definitely, my family is very, very important to me.
Yeah.
You know, I like to go hiking and camping, fishing. My daughter and I go horseback riding all the time.
Oh,
so just a
nice.
lot of outdoor stuff.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
your kids, are they high school age still, or?
All high school age.
Nice.
So my youngest actually turns 13 next week. So officially they will all be teenagers next week. Yeah.
So I'm sure, okay, being the district attorney of Shasta County, I'm just imagining, I mean, did the kids' friends even come to your house, or are they just terrified?
No, they come.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They come and hang out at our house. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have teenage stepsons as well, and
Yeah.
I think that they, if anything, maybe they think I'm gonna like have all this like, you know, the scoop on everything, and
Yeah.
it's actually the opposite. A lot of
Yeah.
times they're telling me things that are happening in the community, and I'm learning more from them than they
Yeah.
are from me. But I'm just grateful half the time if they want to hang out with me at all. So
Yeah,
I love
for
that your
sure.
daughter horseback rides with you.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Just, we like to do anything outdoor, get out in nature, love gardening, love doing all that type of outdoor stuff.
Now, do any of them think that they might want to become lawyers?
None of them have expressed an
No.
interest in that, so that's okay.
I had the opposite. My father was a lawyer,
Yeah.
and I thought, I love, fighting for my case and using the language, like finding a way, I don't know if this is how you see the law, but like finding the written law and kind of making it mean what I believe it means and fighting for that. And my dad, as a lawyer, he's like, I always wanted to be a writer. Why don't you look into that? It's a little bit less of a headache. But I mean, you love what you do.
I do. I loved when I was working the cases a lot more, but I do enjoy what I do and being able to support the attorneys who get to do the cases. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing like doing a trial.
Right.
Being able to take something that's complicated and just really making it everyday, making it understandable, presenting it to a jury, arguing it to the jury, and just kind of seeing them come along with you each day. And then when you finish your closing, just like feeling like you put it all out there, and you can just tell by their faces that they're with you, they believe you, they agree with you, and then to get the verdict, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
So if a DA doesn't typically, take a case to trial, you're not the one arguing on the floor, right?
Yeah.
What exactly do you do?
Well, my office we have close to 100 people working there when it comes down to volunteers and full-time staff. So as you can imagine, that's a lot. There's lots of personnel things that happen. There's budgets. There's a lot of moving pieces every day to just keep the office running. So there's a lot of that, and a lot of just, going to community events, being out in the community. So there's a lot of that type of stuff that needs to be done to just, make sure that we're present in the community and people see me, people can talk to me, people hear from me. But then also spending a lot of time trying to make sure I'm touching base with the people in the office and spending time in the different units, finding out what they're doing and talking to them. So there's a lot to do that consumes more than a full-time day every day.
Are you pretty well staffed up right now when it comes to your attorneys and, the team that you need in place?
No, unfortunately we're not. We're understaffed. I've recently was able to take a deep dive into looking at all the other counties across the state as they compare to our state, as they compare to our county. And what I found is that other counties that have a similar workload based on the number of cases that we file, their staffing is pushing double our staffing, just what they have allocated to their office. So our office is really putting out a lot of work product with very little staff, and that's an area that I'm trying to advocate very strongly for us to try to get up to the staffing that we need. And that's just looking at how many positions we've been allowed to have. That's not necessary, and they're not all full. So if we were all full, we would still be at about half the capacity of what other counties that have similar workload are operating with. But we're, like right now, we're down 4 attorneys. We're down multiple investigators. We're down, I believe it's 3 legal secretaries. So staffing is definitely a big issue.
Do we just have a lot of bad guys here?
Well, we do, but I think that's not unique just to our county. We see it in every county, unfortunately. But and as populations grow, the crime rate grows. It's just the human nature. You're always going to have people who don't follow the law and who commit crimes.
Philosophically, do you feel like people, if you prosecute somebody and they did something wrong, right? Do you feel like there's a good chance that people will reform, like on the inside, and change and like see the error of their ways? Do you ever see that in the people that you put behind bars, or does it kind of just seem like, just go to jail, come back out, and hope they do better?
Well, as a prosecutor, you have to fight the tendency to get too jaded to think that everybody just commits crimes and that everybody is just going to get out of jail and commit crimes again. Because we see the worst of the worst. We see repeat offenders again and again. So it's easy to start thinking like everybody is a criminal. So you have to make sure you don't. You got to stop yourself from thinking that way. There's way more people in our community that don't commit crimes than do. So that's kind of a conscious thing that you have to do as a prosecutor. And you have to be willing to see and believe and know that most people have goodness in them and can reform if they get the opportunity and they get the resources. that is something that can happen. And I have seen that. I've had cases where I've had maybe co-defendants, and you can really see that one of them comes to court and has a totally different attitude than the other one. You know, you kind of see the differences. And I recently went to San Quentin State Prison last week with a lot of the other elected DAs because they're doing a lot of rehabilitation work there to just kind of highlight what they are doing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they talked about was, well, you could put someone away for 10 years in prison and they're just in their cell all day, every day, and maybe that pays their debt to society. Maybe it makes the surviving family or victims feel better that they were locked up.
Right.
But if they come out in 10 years after sitting in their cell for 10 years, they come out angry.
Right.
They come out still a criminal, and now they victimize somebody else. There's more people who are victims. There's
Yeah.
more cost to society. And is that really what we want? Or
Right.
do we want that person to spend the 10 years? Yes, they're in prison, they're not getting out.
Right.
But they're getting anger management. They're getting drug and alcohol counseling. They're getting, how to feel compassionate towards other people. And San Quentin is really doing a lot of that work to try to get people to the point where, okay, most of the people there are going to get out at some point. Why not, when they get out, give them the ability to get a job and not re-victimize?
And you think that happens at the prison level more so than at a county jail?
Yeah, I believe so. But I don't think it happens at all the prisons.
Yeah.
But certainly San Quentin is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like there are just so many laws in California that like everybody's a criminal to a certain extent? I mean, who hasn't broken
Yeah.
at least one law?
Well, when you think about it, I mean, who hasn't gone over the speed limit?
Yeah,
I feel like
that's an easy one,
everybody
right?
has
Yeah.
gone over the speed limit or done something like
Accidentally forgot about something on their taxes.
Yeah.
Maybe. It just
Yeah.
seems like there's a lot,
There's a lot, and every year they pass more and more and more laws. So I feel like, the more they pass, they need to start looking at and getting rid of some others, combining some laws. The problem is that on the state level, our legislature, unfortunately, there's knee-jerk reaction a lot of time from a headline or whatever the popular issue is, and they think they can come up with the solution.
Right.
And they don't work closely enough with prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges who know how that's actually going to play out.
Yeah.
So these laws get passed, and we all see it coming like a train wreck, all the actual consequences that are going to be bad or the things that are forgotten, but it's really hard to get them to listen and change.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we're constantly dealing with a lot of new law and a lot of new law that has all these unintended consequences
Right.
or loopholes of things that aren't covered, and it can be very frustrating.
So technically with, sheriff's deputies or police arrest somebody and they basically put them in jail and they hand you like, hey, we arrested the person for this, do what
Right.
you will with it. You have the power essentially to say, I think that law's kind of dumb, so I'm not going to press charges on this one. Technically?
I mean, technically, yeah, we all take an oath to uphold the laws of the state of California and
Right.
the laws of the nation, and our ethical responsibilities are to go forward if we can.
Right.
If we believe we can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt and all the elements are there, but we do have a lot of discretion to not go forward, like discretion to not file a case in the interest of justice.
Okay.
So if we feel like, this particular person has never had an offense before, we feel like this person was really scared, really learned their lesson, turned their life around, do they need a criminal record? So we
Right.
can use that interest of justice piece to not file a case
Okay.
or to give them diversion. So they have to go do a program, and if they finish their program, we can dismiss the case.
Yeah.
So we do have a lot of flexibility. Ultimately, it is the district attorney and my office in each county that has the ultimate say on whether a case is going to be filed and pursued through the court or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there, I don't know if you're aware of this, but any county laws on the books that are like from 100 years ago and so random, like you can't put your chickens outside on a Tuesday or something like that, that it's like, why is this still here?
Probably, but I can't think of any right now.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So there have been some very interesting cases, like weird things, and a lot of times we see mental health play into things. Like,
Sure.
I'm trying to remember, Alexandra Suverneva, I think her name was, and the one who, I think she like drank urine and started a fire that, caused some major destruction. I mean, how do you factor in mental health issues when
Sure.
it comes to how hard you want to kind of lay the
Sure.
hammer down on someone?
That particular case is a pending case, so I wouldn't be able to really talk about it. But mental health, we do factor that in. We
Yeah.
have we have a special court in Shasta County where, my office, probation, the judge, defense attorneys work together for people that have mental health issues.
Yeah.
Mental health diversion is a big thing now. We have some new laws on that where a person who it feels they have a mental health diagnosis and that is the primary reason for their offense, and they're not of such a serious risk to the community that they should be given diversion. They're getting in that in very significant cases and
Yeah.
getting treatment and ultimately getting their case dismissed under the law
Right.
of mental health diversion. So mental health is a factor that we definitely need to take into consideration on all cases, and we really always have.
It's so interesting, though, because I think everybody can agree that there's a big difference between schizophrenia versus depression, mild depression, right? It's like this,
Sure.
a spectrum
Right.
of different mental health. But I feel like in today's day and age, that almost anybody could say that they have a mental health issue of sorts. Do you ever feel like it's overused in the defense?
Anytime there's going to be a mental health issue brought up, it's just not the defense saying it. I mean,
Okay.
there's doctors and psychiatrists and all of them
Right.
involved writing reports. So all of that is going to be analyzed not only by us, but by the courts to make sure it's in accordance with whichever law we may be under
Yeah.
when they raise some type of mental health
Yeah.
defense to what they did.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about, drug addiction? I think that's something, even before fentanyl was so widespread, it seems like the opioid issue was turning normal people who never thought that they were going to become drug addicts into like, they have a back problem, doctor gives them a prescription, they become physically addicted,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden they're buying heroin in a back alley because their body's physically addicted to something.
Yeah.
What kind of changes have you seen in the opioid epidemic in Shasta County since you've lived there?
Yeah, so when I started my career, the biggest drug issue was methamphetamine. I mean,
yeah.
methamphetamine is still a big issue. But for us to get a heroin case was like not normal. We hardly would get those. And slowly we've seen, okay, heroin cases aren't so uncommon.
Yeah.
Fentanyl, brand new, last 5 years, we'd get one case. Now we've get a ton of cases. So there's always going to be the new drug that people are addicted to. We have an addicted offender program in our county. So if someone is kind of at that last point, they're headed to prison because they've had so many cases, but it appears that their cases have been primarily due because of some type of drug and alcohol addiction. That's kind of one of the last stops is to get into the addicted offender program. And then where it's very concentrated, they're getting all the services, they're having frequent meetings with not only the probation and their treatment providers, but in front of the court and the prosecution and the judge, and it's a very intensive program. So,
Yeah.
and it's to, give them that last chance, but we're always amenable to people getting into a treatment, especially inpatient programs, putting cases over until they get out and become successful, because ultimately, it's going to be better for the entire community if someone can break their addiction, they can be a productive member in society with getting a job, they can be a good role model for their family and their kids. That's going to be better for a community than just locking them up. So
Yeah.
if we have that ability and there's someone who's actually going to go down that path, we want to work with them.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people who aren't there, and if we have to, and we need to keep them in custody to keep them off of our streets or from, breaking into someone's house to steal items to sell to support their addiction.
Right.
We factor that in too, and we're not we're not going to just send everybody into treatment if they're not ready for it. Some people need to go to prison. Some people need to sit in our local jail.
Right.
So, but the whole gambit is available to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like for you, dealing with so much heavy stuff all the time. I mean, how do you step away from it? How do you unwind?
Yeah. I feel like I've always been pretty good at that. By the time I get home from work, I've kind of really worked on switching my thinking to like, okay, what's tonight?
Yeah,
You know, what are we going to do? We're going to go for a walk. What are we going to do with the kids? So I think that's important. You can't be thinking about work all evening and all weekends. You have to have other things that you like in your life and other hobbies and things that interest you.
What are some of your favorites? I know you ride horses.
Yeah, so just outdoor stuff.
Yeah.
Anything outdoor,
Yeah.
I love to do. I've been recently doing a lot of fishing with one of my boys, and my daughter does high school rodeo, so we've been doing a lot of rodeos with her, and then her and I go on trail rides. And
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so it's just anything that's outdoor. Summer's coming up, so a lot of camping. We do a lot of camping as family. Whitewater rafting, we do that every summer. So we just, anything outdoors, we're gonna be signed up and go do it.
So what are your thoughts about like the recreational drug use for totally legal to drink alcohol, right? As long as you're not getting behind the wheel of a car or doing something inappropriate in public.
Yeah.
California says recreational marijuana is legal. Is any of that up your alley? And then also, just in terms of how you view your community and the impacts it has on the community.
Yeah. Well, I don't agree with recreational use of marijuana because I think the studies really show and support that it can be a gateway drug to other drugs, especially if we normalize it too much, such that our kids start using it. There's been a lot of studies that have shown that it can really impact their mental health and can cause some early onset of mental health issues or cause mental health issues that they may not have ever suffered from had they not been sparked by an early drug use, and that it is a stepping stone. I mean, when we have offenders who are being sentenced, frequently we're reading a sentencing report, and it's a vast majority of them started drinking alcohol or smoking marijuana or something like that in their youth.
Yeah.
And they talk about, and then that led to me doing this, and that led to me doing that. So we don't even have to look at like state and national studies that have been done. If you're a prosecutor, you've read enough sentencing reports to just have seen it in real life that those things are stepping stones. So I think to the extent you can not partake in recreational drug use, and I'm not a drinker either, nor is my husband. Maybe a Mai Tai on a beach on vacation. Outside of that, we don't drink, and I think that's a good example for your kids growing up.
I mean, it is interesting how our society is built around alcohol being just like totally a normal thing to get drunk on a weekend or something, and it's it's just like very respectable people do it, but I don't see the benefits. I mean, just the hangover the next day, the bad choices. Oh my gosh, what did I say? It's funny that law-abiding citizens do it all the time. It's part of the fabric of America.
Yeah, and it's their choice. But I agree with you.
Not yours.
Hangover is just not worth it. Not worth it at all.
Okay, so I know that you don't take cases to the trial floor yourself, but when you prosecute, I mean, you have oversight over certain cases. What are some of the ones that you feel kind of the most proud of getting a verdict in your favor recently?
Gosh. Well, the last trial I personally did was 3 or 4 years ago. So I have done a little bit, but it's just each year has gotten harder for me to take a case and have the time. But what am I most proud of? Gosh, that's so difficult because everyone in the office does such amazing work. My time prosecuting crimes against children, I did 3 years of just all the kid crimes, sexual abuse primarily. So I kind of gravitate to an interest in the prosecutors who handle those cases because that was the most rewarding to me. Like I felt like I did the most good for my community doing that. So I just naturally have a lot of pride in our prosecutors that handle those cases. But everything is important. We have amazing prosecutors doing our homicide cases, our domestic violence cases, We have great brand new prosecutors doing our misdemeanor cases. So it'd be very difficult to pinpoint a couple cases because
Yeah.
we handle a lot. I mean, we hear about, the community hears a fraction of what we actually do online or in the media. And they hear about some of the more cases that maybe the police posted about or did a story about, or a news agency did a story about. But I mean, that is a fraction of what we do.
Oh, yeah.
We handle close to 10,000 cases per year through my office. And I mean, I don't know about every single one because
Right.
that's a lot to know about. But I'm certainly involved in a lot of them, and we're doing great work.
Yeah.
I mean, there's cases that we get amazing verdicts and amazing pleas too.
Right,
Right.
right. We just got a verdict on that Michael Merriman one not so long ago. That was a very disturbing case.
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed like this person obviously had some. I always assume that someone has mental health issues if you can just murder someone in cold blood, because it seems insane to me.
Sure,
But
yeah.
that wasn't really the case with him, right? I mean, he
No, I
thought
mean,
it out and did it.
I feel like anyone who's going to murder someone, especially with a pre-deliberating about it, isn't
Yeah.
thinking like you and I.
Yeah.
They're not like the average citizen, but it's not raising to the level of a mental
Right.
disorder, potentially. But yeah, that was a very significant case. Murdered 3 people, and very intentional acts
Yeah.
over about a week time
Yeah.
period in which the 3 people were murdered.
Do you know how he acted in the courtroom? Like, did he show remorse or?
No, there didn't seem to be a ton of remorse from what I heard. I wasn't in there when he was
Yeah.
sentenced, but yeah, it was a very significant case with 3 different people who were murdered, that their families are just
Gosh.
Devastated forever from that crime.
Does it ever
Those
just
crimes.
like creep you out when you see somebody there and it's just you see that they just don't care?
Yeah.
you
Well, for me, the biggest thing was going into the courtroom with someone, at a trial who was there charged with molesting kids.
Oh, yeah.
That was always kind of like the creepiest. Like,
Yeah.
don't even really want to sit at the same table
Yeah.
as them, especially when it's the really, really. I mean, they're all egregious, but
Right.
when you've got someone sitting there, I took cases to trial that had 4 or 5 victims, plus victims that from their past that maybe we couldn't charge then, and it's
Yeah.
just the level of just visceral response to even being near them.
Yeah.
But still keeping it professional and ethical and doing what I needed to do to uphold their rights and the rights of the victim, and prove the case very passionately to the jury to make sure that the right decision was made.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about Nikki McCain? Is there any progress on that?
Well, the investigation is being done by the sheriff's office, so
Right.
the
So it's
sheriff.
not like it's in your hands, right?
No, it's not in my hands. My office has worked very closely with them over the last almost a full year now since she was missing. The sheriff's office did recently announce that it is now a homicide investigation as opposed to a missing person.
Yeah.
They've worked very, very hard with a lot of agencies to, do a lot of search warrants, a lot of work. And I know it's frustrating for the community to not have a lot of information, but preserving the integrity of the investigation and ultimate prosecution, if someone is able to be held responsible, is very, very much the most important thing.
Yeah. Do you suspect Tyler?
Oh, I'm not going to comment anything at all about
Yeah.
the case, who I might think or don't think, because like I said, the integrity of the case is the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, in your time as a district attorney, do you feel like from when you began to where we are today that things are better in Shasta County? Do you feel like it's a safer place or?
No, and I hate to say that.
Yeah.
Because when I started 23 years ago, especially if you look at it when I first went into doing felony prosecution, so a couple years into my career, I felt like we could really get justice for all victims. For example, if I sent someone who, burglarized a bunch of homes and stole a bunch of cars to prison for 15, 20 years because they have a lot of priors too, I could talk to that victim and say, you know what, they got 20 years. Under the penal code, they're going to get this amount of credits based on their criminal history. The math works out to they're going to be out in 16.5 years or whatever it may be. And I could have confidence in telling a victim that, and I could know, and they could know that, oh, I can relax for that amount of time.
Yeah.
It's just not like that anymore. With the way the laws have changed, I can't look a victim in the eye when they get a 20-year when the defendant gets a 20-year sentence and say they won't be out for 16.5 years. I have to explain, well, Prop 57 passed, and it gives them this type of credit, and it gives them this type of credit, and this thing passed, which gives them early parole. You know, there's so many caveats that a victim nowadays is kind of left still involved.
Yeah.
To an extent they can't really actually like close the door for any amount of time. And that's sad. And I feel like that makes our community less safe and less level of comfort.
All right.
Yeah.
You touched earlier on the staffing issues in your office and how your job is not so much to go to trial, but kind of to you're the glue, right? That holds it all together. How do you keep morale up? Are you like a pizza party and donuts kind of person, or words of affirmation? And how is morale?
We try to do all of that.
Yeah.
Morale is good in the office. We do a lot of fun things. There isn't a holiday that goes by or something where we're not doing something. You know, even Cinco de Mayo, we had a potluck, and we had the office was decorated with like sombreros and just fun things. We try to do, anytime there's a court holiday, we try to incorporate something fun for everybody to do together on top of whatever work they're doing that day. We try to be involved, walking around and talking to everybody and be engaged and really listen to people and try to communicate and give them information so people don't feel like, you know, they're the last to hear even though they work in the office. And we try to be very, very family friendly. We don't want, no matter what position you work in the office, whether you're hourly or your salary, you know, if your kid has a play, we want you to go to it.
Right.
Just, you know, you're going to go and we're going to cover your stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to work late, or maybe you're going to take a vacation hour, or whatever it may be. We're not, no, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. Because we shouldn't be work as our primary thing in our life. You know, we work to support our family,
right?
And but our family's most important.
Yeah.
And if we lose sight of that as an employer, then you're not treating your employees and your staff and your team the way that they should be treated, and they're going to look for another place that does treat them better.
Right.
And not only do we want to treat them good just because that's like the right kind thing to do, but we want people to stay and we want people to like what they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
For people who main source of information about what goes on at a DA's office is TV, TV shows, lawyer shows. What is one of the biggest misconceptions you think are out there based on Hollywood's projection of your job?
Well, that cases only take a matter of, days to solve and get through the system and be sentenced.
Right.
And that we have so much technology at our fingertips. Like, we can get DNA or fingerprints on everything. Yeah, there's a lot better DNA capabilities, fingerprint capabilities, and all that nowadays, but we can't get that on every case.
Yeah.
Because the Department of Justice, who processes all of our physical evidence for DNA, fingerprints, all of that stuff, they have limited staffing too. So they have to prioritize what cases they will even process DNA on. So we can go to trial because we've got enough evidence, eyewitnesses, circumstantial, all of that. And the jury might be like, but why didn't you get a check for fingerprints on that? Or why didn't you check for DNA? And that concept of like, well, we can't do that in every case doesn't always sit well with them.
Right.
When on TV, they do it on every case and they get it in 2 days, where it can take us 6 months to get evidence processed and back to us, which can take that long for us to even get to file the case if it's critical for filing, or we're at trial and it wasn't done in time. So there's a lot more human element and realistic element in real life than is portrayed on TV.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Last thing I wanted to ask you about was the flooding, the courthouse closure. How's that affecting everybody? Is everybody getting the week off?
No. So my office is working.
Okay.
We're using the week to, get caught up, try to get things organized and together. We're also going to try to work with the courts to try to, because their computer systems, everything is just impacted. I mean, it's a complete closure for them. So we're going to work with trying to get them to get information out of our system to help them get prepared to reopen next week on top of the work that we're doing. But we're still at the office, but we're, everyone gets to wear jeans this week and be a little bit more comfortable because we're not off to court.
Right.
But it's work as normal at my office.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being with us here today. It was really fun getting to know you and getting
Thanks
to
for
know
having me.
what's going on in Shasta County.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for listening today. I decided to offer this podcast after enough of you let me know that you wanted a deeper dive into certain stories than you get on our TV broadcasts. We elect certain people to represent our voice, but who are they really? My hope is that this podcast answers that question. I love your feedback, and I want to know who you'd like to hear from next. Just fill out that comment section and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Spotify.